We'll now call the meeting of the Waco MPO Policy Board of June 16, 2022 to order at 2:02 p.m. Staff, is the meeting been posted? Yes. Okay. Before we start, I want to do a quick roll call. Keith Bond, Josh Borderud, Deidre Emerson, Paul is here for Paul Kane. Everybody is here for Deidre Emerson in the city of Waco. Keith or Kevin Evans here. Scott Felton, proxy. We got a proxy here. Zane is in for Scott. Did judge. Ross Harris.
Proxy.
Wow. Good. Amy here for Ross Harris. Mayor Jaska here. Mayor Meek is, we don't have the proxy for him, he's not here. Sean Ubrecht. Sean is not here. And Stan is here. Stan Switek. Bo Thomas is here. Andrea Bearfield is not here. Jacob Bell. Good to see you. Good to see you again. Bert Eckerling. Not here. Travis Gibson. Not here. Will Jones. I don't see Will. And Alice Rodriguez. Not here. And okay. The first item here is we will now open a public hearing. Welcome all the guests here today. We provide an opportunity for the public to address the MPO Policy Board on any agenda item. Please complete a speaker's registration card with MPO staff. Speakers will be allotted one presentation at the beginning of the agenda for each agenda item the speaker wishes to address. Please note each action item will have a separate public hearing later in the agenda. Speakers have the option of addressing the board at either time, but you will be only allowed one opportunity to address the board per agenda item. And for items not on today's agenda, there's a separate hearing of visitors at the end of the meeting. Staff, do we have any registered speakers? No. There are no registered speakers, so we'll move to the first agenda item, which is item number 3, and consider the approval of the minutes of the May 19th, 2022 MPO Policy Board meeting. Copy of the minutes is provided in your meeting packet. Are there any corrections to the minutes as submitted? Anybody have any comments on the minutes? Then the minutes are approved as presented. There are 3 action items today and a couple of updates from Strategic Planning Work Group and the Technical Advisory Committee and our director. The 3 action items include discussion on the public participation plan. The second action item talks about travel time reliability targets as part of the FAST Act. And the third item is we're pursuing grant opportunity for a comprehensive safety action plan. So going to the first item, which is item number 4, the consideration and action regarding approval of the Resolution 2022-10, the adoption of amendments to the public participation plan, the PPP. Okay.
Thank you, Councilman Holmes. So our public participation plan, we review these documents on a regular basis, and the MPO staff over time to make sure that it aligns with what we do and also improve the document for clarity purposes. Make several changes. The first most important change that was made was that, if you recall, that the Technical Advisory Committee it received a formal bylaw, and based on that bylaw, it's now called Technical Advisory Committee. It's actually we need to update our PPP throughout the document to make sure it is correctly and accurately reflected. We also make sure that the additional planning process, the way we follow them, is also included in the PPP. And then 2 other items, we wanted to make sure that all the MPO boards, committees, and the work group meeting guidelines were adequately represented in the PPP. The virtual meeting information that was part of the COVID-related activities that we were undergoing had been removed, and therefore our PPP also needed to reflect that. There was a mention of executive session related to policy board that was confusing, so we clarified that policy board can call an executive session when needed. And the third major item is that there are 3 types of actions that were listed as minor and major, but all the remaining items did not have a title. And it typically meant that they did not require any formal public comment period independent of the policy board meeting. And those are examples of those are such as passing a resolution or a support letter that the policy board often approves. And so we made sure that there is a separate heading called routine actions so that we can classify those types of actions into that. We also included a discussion on performance targets. The public comment period was April 8th through June 2nd. We had two public meetings, April 11th at 12 noon and 5:30 p.m. No formal comments were received during those meetings. Technical Advisory Committee met and decided upon June 2nd and recommended its approval. So today we have a public hearing and then the policy board makes the action. So the recommendation to the policy board from the Technical Advisory Committee was to adopt the proposed amendment to the PPP.
Are there any questions for staff on this, on these amendments or these refinements of the PPP? I'll say that we've got, you know, the PPP, another acronym here, public participation plan. Amongst all the other acronyms, this is the one that says, public, here's how you bring an issue to the NPO. We want to hear from you. Here's the process that you follow. So, we want to make sure everybody has the opportunity to participate in that process. So, I think Mukesh has done a great job of refining our PPP, and I support the changes that we're making there. So, any other questions for staff? There being none, we'll now open a public hearing for any registered speaker on this item. Are there any speakers? There being none, we'll close the public hearing, and I'll entertain a motion regarding the approval of Resolution 2022-10.
Make a motion.
We have a motion from Mr. Evans.
I'll second.
We have a second from Mr. Bond. Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. This motion passes. Item 5 is a consideration and action regarding approval of Resolution 2022-11, Waco MPO Policy Board support of travel time reliability targets for calendar year 2026, established by the Texas Department of Transportation in accordance with requirements identified as part of the Fixing America's Surface Transportation Act. That's a FAST Act. Mukesh?
So most of us drive in Waco. In fact, most of us drive in single occupancy vehicle. And so most of us have a very clear sense of how much time does it take for us to get from home to work or shopping or for any other purposes. And most of the times we get into the car and simply go. And occasionally when we want to complain about our commute, those are typically the worst days that we often complain about. So this travel time reliability captures those moments, and it captures them in a bunch of different categories. So typically in Waco, for instance, average commute time is about 18 minutes or so. We're creeping up to about 20 minutes on average. But typically, most of us don't think of our commute in terms of exactly 20 minutes. We remember the worst times that it took us maybe 30 minutes, or because of construction, because of any accident, or any other kind of traffic jam that we encounter. So travel time reliability essentially takes the discussion out of the average time and actually makes it a little more practical, so that we have a sense of how do we need to adjust our transportation system to make sure that there is consistency and predictability in our travel. So it made travel time reliability sounds somewhat jargonistic and technical, but it is really important. Businesses use it all the time because as we have moved from just-in-time business system, if a truck moves its vehicle faster than what is expected or slower than what is expected, both of them cost businesses a significant amount of money, not only in terms of logistical costs, but also storage as well as production delay itself. One of the important one that jumps out at us for emergency vehicles during cardiac arrest, survival rates increase by 7 to 10% for every minute of delay that the ambulance actually goes through. And of course, we're all very familiar with very cranky workers in our offices if we get delayed too much. And at the same time, if we get home too late, it means that we have less time with our family and friends. And that had its own results in further reduction in labor productivity. And then to hammer home the most important point is that transportation is yet another network that we rely upon at a very fundamental level. And if we expect our communications to be reliable, if we expect our water sewer system to be reliable, transportation needs to be reliable the same way. And reliability in this case simply means that it does what we expect it to do. There are many different ways that it could be measured. We have considered travel time index, buffer index, planning time index, and so you can see the ones on the left-hand side. In map 21, Transportation Appropriation Bill, we settled on which measures are we going to use. And the FAST Act made it a requirement for NPOs to set its own performance targets. The two most important ones that we deal with is LOTTR, level of travel time reliability, and truck travel time reliability. And there are several different measures that do not apply to Waco NPO. They are more specific to non-met areas, which are also TMA's, transportation management areas. And so we do not have to deal with them. These are the only two measures that we set targets for. So let me quickly explain. And the LOTTR gets calculated in a somewhat complicated way. So instead of getting very deeply into the weeds of how we calculate it, the best way to understand the percentage number that we see is that we typically set the target at about 80%. And 80% effectively means, for all practical purposes, every 5 miles I drive, only 1 mile is going to be unreliable. The rest of them is going to be reliable. It's a gross oversimplification, and I'm happy to explain technically how we measure it. The second one is the TTR, the truck travel time reliability. And that one uses the 95th percentile and its ratio to 50th percentile. The expected value, if it is something close to 1.5, it is wonderful. We often tolerate it up to 175. After 175, 1.75, it typically, we expect us to do something about it. And so in the FAST Act, we have to set these targets, system performance targets, every 4 years. For what we are considering today, it is for 2026. And the NPO and the text dot, we might consider a mid-course correction. So that would mean 2 years from now. And again, to also make sure that we understand that we are not necessarily referring to areas that are not on the national highway system. We are only referring to these reliability targets. So not on the local roads, but only on state-maintained roads. And to put that in perspective, in 2022, 11% of regional lane miles in the Waco planning area were on system roads, but it accounted for 60% of the regional travel. So these numbers really do mean a great deal for us. Initially, we adopted the last time in 2018, and this is a map of all the on-system network we have. So Interstate Highway 35 is in blue, and all the other ones are in red. Those are the only network on which we consider these reliability targets. The three separate ones are the person-to-person mile traveled on the interstate system, that's reliable, and same thing for non-interstate. So I-30 for us, it's only I-35 for number 1, and all the other ones are for number 2, and then the truck travel time reliability. To give you a perspective on where have we been, all the blue dots, they represent the actual data up to 2021, and the red dots are based on those previous data and what the expected construction delays are, what we expect, and based on that we project it out until 2026. For travel time reliability targets for 2022 for TTTR, one of the things you'll notice that this is quite there's a lot more variability in this as compared to the level of travel time reliability. So what we're proposing here is that in 2022 we had adopted at 80% for all traffic on interstate. We stay at 80%. For other freeways, all traffic, we had adopted at 80%. We can go up to 85% and expect that level of reliability. And for trucks, we do expect it to deteriorate slightly from 1.75 to 1.78. So we had a public comment period from May 23 to June 1. We had a public meeting on May 23, 2022. And one formal comment we received, and the Technical Advisory Committee considered it at its June 2nd meeting. And today the public hearing for it and the policy board action. Technical Advisory Committee recommends to the board that we support them.
Okay, are there any questions of staff on travel time reliability targets?
And thankfully, the FAST Act doesn't require any misery index targets being.
No, index range does not.
Okay, so we can stay away from that.
Yes.
Mukesh, how does, on the interstate targets, does the upcoming completion of I-35 change anything, or was it factored into the consideration?
Yes, so the TTI does these target setting for across the state and sets out its proposed targets for all MPOs. And they do anticipate, based on what is included in the TIP documents of most MPOs, they try to anticipate what the construction timeframe might be, and they try to make the adjustment accordingly. So yes.
This would
Now,
be.
these are, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, these targets are what the TTI proposes, and if we want to make any adjustment to it, it is up to us.
This is interesting to me, just how and Mukesh went through well, just how you calculate the proper ratio, just the target and measurement is curious and interesting. And really to your point, Jacob, on the I-35 construction, I think you said we did have it at 85, we dropped it to 80 in anticipation of there being travel time issues. We're now putting it back up as 85 where it was before for a 2024 target.
I thought interstate was gonna hold at 80.
Yeah, for interstate, we'll hold it at 80. For non-interstate, we'll move it to 85.
Yeah, I'm sorry, that's correct. 85 went back for the other principal arterials.
Yes.
Okay. And then I guess the other question that I had about this, what is the consequence of not meeting the target? And how is that measured? When do we see a measurement? How do we do?
Yeah, so
Was it 80, was it 79 or 82 or what?
yeah, so we typically, so there's no clear relationship between not meeting the target and what happens to any of the funding categories. What we typically do is that we take these targets and then make sure that they're reflected in our project selection criteria for the next MTP. So that's what we primarily use these targets for.
Great. Any other questions of staff? This time I'll open a public hearing for any registered speakers on this item. Are there any
We
speakers?
have one registered, not registered, but made a public comment.
Okay.
From Mr. Charlton.
Okay, Mr. Charlton, would you like to speak, or could we get this handed out to the?
It's in the packets.
It's in the packets. Okay. Y'all have it. Okay. Everybody needs to read that. That's great. At this time, we will close the public hearing and I'll entertain a motion regarding approval of resolution 2022-11. So got a motion from Mr. Borderood. Do I hear a second? Second from Mr. Bell. Any discussion on this item? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. That motion passes. On to item 6, consideration and action regarding approval of resolution 2022-12. Waco MPO Policy Board support of pursuing FHWA grant opportunity to develop a comprehensive safety action plan for the planning area of the MPO. Okay.
So at this point, we have invited Ed Burgess from Federal Highway Administration to talk to us about how important safety concerns are for Federal Highway Administration, and we'll follow that up with some of the discussion on what we plan to do over the next 3 months or so. Ed, can you unmute yourself and see if we can hear you?
Testing. Can you hear me, Mukesh?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ed Burgos. I am a safety engineer with the Federal Highway Administration. And today I'm going to be talking about different topics. I do have some topics on Vision Zero. And Mukesh, could you go forward on the slides? So I'm going to be talking about Vision Zero very briefly. Also going to touch on the National Roadway Safety Strategy, the Safe Citizen approach. Then I'm going to be talking and providing an overview of the Safe Streets for All grant program. And they're going to be talking about the proven safety countermeasures that Federal Highway has. And toward the end, I also have a couple more of resources that may be very beneficial to everyone. So if you can forward my slide, thank you. So I wanted to start the presentation with this question: what is Vision Zero? And there are three overarching themes on what we call Vision Zero. So the first one, no loss of life is acceptable. And when you look at our transportation system, you see that we have death on our roadways, people biking, walking, driving, people taking the bus. And we need to get to a point where we say that those deaths are no longer acceptable, that we can have a better system, and we can have people that deserve to come home at the end of the day and be with their families, because the transportation system is safe enough for them to do that. Now, the second, traffic fatalities and injuries are preventable. Sometimes we think, well, yeah, maybe that's the cost of doing business. Well, it should not be. We know how to reduce fatalities. We know how to reduce serious injuries. We just need to do more coordination and work together. And the last one, people make mistakes. We all make mistakes. I bet that most of us have run a red light that we didn't mean to, or we passed a stop sign. And the penalty for those mistakes should not be death. And all of us should have an equal right to be with our families at the end of the day. Next slide. So the Vision Zero takes me to the first step on working toward this ambitious long-term goal of reaching zero roadway fatalities. So earlier this year, the US DOT presented the National Roadway Safety Strategy, which outlines the United States Department of Transportation comprehensive approach to significantly reduce serious injuries and death on our nation's highways, roads, and streets. So for those of you that might know, or for those of you that might not know, safety is the United States Department of Transportation top priority. And the National Roadway Safety Strategy represents the wide approach that the USD is working with stakeholders across the country to achieve this goal. Now, the implementation of the National Roadway Safety Strategy will be arranged around 5 complementary objectives corresponding to the safe system approach. And for those of you that are not familiar with the safe system approach, it is an approach that has been embraced by the transportation community across the entire globe. And it is this effective way on addressing and mitigating the risk in our transportation system. And how it works is that building and reinforcing multiple layers of protection to prevent both crashes from happening and then minimizing the harm to those people involved on the crashes when these do occur. So if you look at the diagram on your left, you see the 5 safe system approach elements. First one, we have safer people. But what it means is that encourage safe and responsible behavior by people who use our roads. Then you have safer roads. What this means is design roadway environments to mitigate human mistakes and to facilitate the travel by the most vulnerable road users. Now, safer vehicles, this one expands on the availability of the vehicle systems and the features that will help prevent crashes and minimize the impact of those crashes on both occupants and non-occupants of the vehicles. Safer speed is just about promoting safer speeds in all of the roadway environments. And the last one, post-crash care, is to enhance the survivability of crashes through fast access to emergency care. Now, if we forward one slide and we talk about, I'm sorry, next slide. Now, if we talk about the National Roadway Safety Strategy, and we look at this strategy, this document, you will see that for each of the 5 elements of this safe system approach, there will be key departmental actions that the USDOT will take to promote each of these elements. And what I have on the screen is just like an example of one of the key departmental actions to enable safer roads. And this is a quote from that document, and it says, leverage the use of 6 billion Safe Streets and Roads for All grant initiative which is included in the bipartisan infrastructure law. Next slide. So this takes me to Safe Streets and Roads for All, the grant program. So this is a new program that was established by the bipartisan infrastructure law. And the primary goal of the Safe Streets and Roads for All grant program is to improve roadway safety by supporting communities in developing comprehensive action plans. And I'm sorry, I meant safety action plans that are based on the safe system approach and implementing projects and strategies that will significantly reduce or eliminate transportation-related fatalities and serious injuries. So you may be asking who is eligible to apply for this grant fund. One specific part of this fund is that the state DOTs are not allowed to apply. So the organizations that are eligible to apply for this is MPOs, counties, cities, towns, transit agencies, and we at Federal Highway and the US DOT, we've been promoting a series of webinars that I'm going to be talking more about the webinars in the next couple of slides. So if we look at the kind of like the program design and we look at the grant types inside the Safe Streets for All, you will see that we have action plan grants and implementation grants. So I'm going to be focusing on the action plan portion of the grants. So if you forward one slide. So the action plan, this is the foundation of the Safe Streets for All grant program. So I'm going to spend just a little bit more time on this slide. So for the purposes of the Safe Streets for All grant program, an action plan, the process and what it should include is a leadership commitment with a high-ranking official or governing body, and establish a structure to oversee the process, a goal of zero fatalities or serious injuries, and a timeline to reduce these serious injuries and these fatalities. Also, a safety analysis to identify safety problems, community input through collaboration and engagement with stakeholders, consideration of equity in the action plan development, thoughtful changes to standard practices and policies to prioritize safety, a data-driven approach to identify and prioritize projects and strategies, and an evaluation piece to measure the progress over time. So the notice of funding opportunity, it was published back in May 16 this year, and we call this first one of the Safe Streets for All. So how you can apply is by going to the website that you see on the screen. And also there's a specific website dedicated to Streets for All program where you will find the notice of funding opportunity, you will find material and resources. There's also a checklist and some frequently asked questions. And I want to mention the importance of the frequently asked question because it is a really well-developed section of that website. We've been having webinars, which I'm going to be talking about in the next slide, but we've been having webinars for like several webinars throughout these last weeks. And all the questions that have come up on these webinars are being put out to the public on these frequently asked questions. So I encourage you to visit the frequently asked questions portion of that website. Now, the webinars that you see on the screen, this was the latest round of webinars. We just had 2 of them. The first one that we have on June 13, that was like more of an overview of the Safe Streets for All grant program. Then on June 15, we had another webinar that was more focused on the action plan portion of the grant. And both of these webinars that had already happened, there's a recording available for you to watch if you were not able to participate. Now, next week on June 23rd, there's going to be another webinar, but that one is going to be focused on the implementation portion of the grant. Now, we at Federal Highway, we have this initiative that we call the Proven Safety Countermeasures. And I want to gear my presentation now toward these proven safety countermeasures. So if you remember back a couple of slides, I was talking that we do know how to reduce fatalities and serious injuries. These are just a few of the proven safety countermeasures that we know that have been proving effective. So let me just give you a history on the Proven Safety Countermeasures initiative. So back in 2008, Federal Highway launched the Proven Safety Countermeasures as a collection of countermeasures and strategies that are effective in reducing roadway fatalities and serious injuries. Then these countermeasures were updated on 2012 and again on 2017. And then the most current update, it happened on 2021 last year, which included 9 more proven safety countermeasures. So in order for a countermeasure to become a proven safety countermeasure under Federal Highways kind of like standards, is twofold. First, it has to be proven effective. And there's one measure that we can prove effectiveness is the crash modification factors. So whenever you have a crash modification factor for one of these kind of measures that is lower than 1, then it tells you that it decreases the crashes. Second, the second selection criteria, it was that there was not a widespread deployment of these countermeasures. So the intent is to encourage localities and state DOTs for a widespread implementation of these underutilized strategies and countermeasures. Now, if we look at the existing set of the proven safety countermeasures and we fast forward to include the new proven safety countermeasures, you will see a consistent theme that emphasizes the priorities of Federal Highway. First, starting with complete streets, then you may remember the safe system approach that I talked a couple of slides ago, speed management, equity, and climate. Next slide. Now, I'm going to be what you see on the screen are the new proven safety countermeasures, and if I want to talk about the 9 of them, or if I want to talk about the total 29 of them, I might need like a couple of hours. So I'm just going to be focusing on just 3 of them. So I'm going to be focusing the rest of the presentation talking about rectangular rapid flashing beacons, or RRFBs, lightning, and crosswalk visibility enhancements. So if we forward one slide, we have the rectangular rapid flashing beacons. So if we think about a marked crosswalk or a pedestrian warning sign, yes, it can improve safety for pedestrian at a crossing location, but at times it may not be sufficient for drivers to visibly locate the crossing location and therefore yield to pedestrians. So to enhance the pedestrian visibility and to increase the driver awareness at an uncontrolled marked crosswalks, transportation agencies can install a pedestrian actuated rectangular rapid flashing beacons to accompany the pedestrian, and this can be the pedestrian sign, it can be a school sign, or even a trail warning sign. It is important to know that the RRFB shall only be used to supplement the post-mounted warning sign that I just mentioned with a diagonal downward arrow, the plaque, or an overhead mounting warning sign that is located at an uncontrolled marked location. Next slide. So a common question that we get from local agencies is, where can I install this? So there's a really good guide from Federal Highway that's called the Guide for Improving Pedestrian Safety at Uncontrolled Crossing Locations. And inside that guide, there's like a matrix, or like a chart, is the matrix that you see on the screen. And this is very useful because you have your roadway configuration, and then you have your posted speed and your AADT, and then you can match what will be your appropriate consideration for the type of roadway that you have and the volume. So if we look at the research behind the rectangular rapid flashing beacons, we see a 47% reduction on pedestrian crashes and up to a 98% on motorist yielding rate. Now, if I move to crosswalk visibility enhancement, which is the second proven safety countermeasure that I want to talk today. And again, if we think of a crosswalk, there are many different conditions that can reduce the visibility at this. And this will contribute to safety issues such as poor lining, roadway geometry, or maybe parked cars. So this countermeasure, it includes 3 main crosswalk visibility enhancements that can help you make crosswalks and the pedestrian using them more visible to drivers. So lightning, high visibility crosswalks, and by this I mean using patterns like the bar pairs, the continental, or the ladder. And then the third visibility enhancement is using the advanced yield or the stuffed pavement markings. And this includes the, you may know them as the shark teeth or the stop bars. So these are features that can be used in combination to indicate the preferred or the optimal location for people to cross. And also it reinforces the driver requirements to yield the right of way to pedestrian at these crossing locations. So next one is the lining. This is the third and the last proven safety countermeasure that I wanted to talk about. And if we think about driving or walking, if we drive or walk in a less safe, darkest area, it might have reduced visibility for pedestrians. So if we look at the data, although the number of fatal crashes that occur at the daylight is about the same of those that occur in darkness, only 25% of the vehicles' miles travels occur at night. So because of that, we can say that the fatality rate at night is 3 times higher than at the daytime. So what this countermeasure means is that if we apply continuously lightning along segments or at spot locations such as intersections or pedestrian crossings, lightning can significantly improve the overall visibility and increase the sight distance, and also make the roadside obstacles more noticeable to the driver, and therefore it will minimize the nighttime crashes. So the research behind this proven safety countermeasure, it shows a 42% reduction in nighttime injury pedestrian crashes and intersections, and 38% reduction in nighttime intersection crashes. Now, if we look at segments, the effectiveness has been 28% reduction in nighttime injury crashes on urban highways. Now, I want to end my presentation putting out there that there are several proven safety countermeasure resources that we have. The first one is that Federal Highway has an updated website for the proven safety countermeasures. That website, it includes the all the 28 countermeasures. So it will, one of the features that it has is that it has a search tool and filter tool. So depending on your focus area, it can probably be speed management, whether you want to address intersection, roadway departure. So it will have a filter where you can activate it, and just, it will tell you what are the countermeasures that you can use for your situation. Also on that website, there are the fact sheets that we have for all of the proven safety countermeasure, and it also includes the new one, the new 9 proven safety countermeasures. Now, we also have a booklet that whenever we go on conference or maybe when we go out to meetings, we also like to share with the public. If any of you or if the in the Waco MPO would like some of these resources, we have an initiative where we connect you to our headquarter offices, and we can also provide these flyers or booklets so you can share them with your staff. And with that, if anybody has any question, I'll be happy to answer.
Any questions? Great report. Appreciate it. Rakesh, you have some follow-up?
Yes. So at this point in time, for to bring it home to here to McLennan County, what we are requesting is that, well, let me give you a little bit of background. In January and February meeting, we adopted new safety targets for our area. And at that point in time, we agreed to select a mix of projects that will allow us to achieve our targets. State of Texas, or the Texas DOT, has already signed on to the Vision Zero initiative, whereby it expects to reduce the fatality across the state to significantly decline. And this particular notice of funding opportunity is probably the most important opportunity that we have. I wanted to sort of bring us back to where we were. We had presented it in January and February. If you recall that in most cases, McLennan County were slightly short of what the previous targets were. And also, if you look at the 5-year rolling averages, our number of fatality from 2012 until 2021 has been somewhat consistent over the years. But the one that I wanted to highlight today that you may not have seen before is that McLennan County used to do better than the overall state average until 2016. But since then, we have gotten a bit worse. And when you look at the national trend line also, you notice that not only the state of Texas is higher than the national average, but the McLennan County is significantly higher than the national average. So this effectively gives us a context on how important this issue is. When we develop a comprehensive safety action plan, these are the 8 very important components that we must include in them: the leadership, commitment, and goal setting. I'm not going to go over all of this. The most important part if we receive the grant is going to be that we will have to put together a steering committee of a large number of people from the policy board, the technical advisory committee, as well as several members from the community, as well as several people who work on this area throughout McLennan County. And they will help us guide in the development of the plan itself. But the plan will also end up identifying several different projects, which we would then be applying. Each of the municipalities will then be applying to fund those projects and source them directly to the grant. A few important things that I wanted to mention was that there is a local match requirement of 20% match from non-federal sources that we must provide, and it includes all the in-kind matches, such as any kind of personnel, goods, services, and space. There are 2 different criteria that we will be paying attention to. First one, there are 2 points for the safety impact, so the amount of safety impacts that we expect this plan to impact. And then the second portion is the equity impact, in which the portion of the community that is disadvantaged, how will they be affected by that? The notice of funding opportunities leaves a very wide room for what the size of and the scope of the project could be. They expect the minimum to be 200,000 and maximum to be up to 5 million for very large areas in which multiple jurisdictions are applying simultaneously. We are an eligible entity, and there are several different approaches that we could be taking. Vision Zero towards Zero Death, Complete Street, all of it. And so for today, in your packet, I have included a draft resolution. And after yesterday's webinar, after hearing the presentation from the Federal Highway Commission, I also made sure that some of items that they were discussing was adequately reflected in the resolution. So one of the major changes that I made in the resolution earlier, the resolution was written largely to drive home that we will be applying for a grant. But in this case, if you, did we distribute the new resolution? Yes.
Everybody has a new language?
Yes.
Revised language.
And so in the revised language, you'll notice that it makes references to directly to safety measures, and that we will be working with all the municipalities in McLennan County to help them not only select the through supporting resolutions, project developments, and the local match contributions. And so that's really the major change between what was in the package and what you have in front of you. And this is a change I made after the webinar yesterday that Federal Highway Administration had put together.
Are there any questions of staff on this issue?
So the consideration is to pursue a grant for a planning project,
Yes.
which the planning project would probably get some framework for project selection or identify some projects. And then projects would be a next step.
Yes, actually, so what we expect is, so in this particular case, we'll also do significant amount of safety analysis for the entire McLennan County. And so one of the useful tools is the safety audit for all the roadways that we're considering. And then we can identify, so several of the items that Ed had explained about whether it is better lighting or whether it's better crosswalk or whether it is speed considerations, some awareness campaign about distracted driving, all of that will be included as part of the plan development. It will also identify a set of project selection criteria, prioritization tools, and then each of the municipalities together or individually can then refer to those projects and expect funding from the Federal Highway Administration.
So if we do this and identify a number of projects, does the fact that we went through this process help our chances to secure additional grant funding for the construction of?
In fact, this is a precondition to applying for any project.
Okay. And I believe you said there's a 20% local match for the planning project.
Yes.
That's covered in budget already available, or would that be?
No, this is something that we will have to make sure we have in place before 15th of September. 15th of September is the deadline to submit the grant.
There's on system roads, the off system roads, and the any roads.
For this particular grant opportunity, it's for all of them. Yes. So when we do this,
Local streets in the city.
yes,
State highways.
yes.
As a matter of fact, the funding goes directly, doesn't go through the DOT, the funding goes directly to whoever the project sponsor is for these projects.
That's one thing that is really important for us to know, that previously a lot of federal funds are not available for a lot of local roads. Almost all the projects here would be.
Any other questions or comments? I'll just chime in here saying I was in Washington, D.C. this week talking to our congressmen or U.S. senators, and I also got a chance to talk to some folks from the transportation department. And I asked them, are we missing anything in this new infrastructure law for Central Texas? And they said, make sure you're taking a look at the Safe Streets and Roads for All program. And I was so proud to say, yeah, we're looking at that this week in our meeting. So I think it's very timely that we're on the very front end of this, and I appreciate staff getting tuned into this. Second thing I like about this one is this is for all jurisdictions. It's not just going to be a Waco program or a Marina program or an Elmont program. This is looking at all the streets in our MPO, or all the roadways in our MPO. And the nature of the plan is great too. This is for safety. This is particularly after looking at the trend that we saw when we're kind of behind Texas and the US. I think it's a good place to be focusing. And as Jacob brought up, you kind of have to have this one in place to qualify for further grants. So I think it's good that we track this, and we have a couple months to get everything filled out and going. And I think that will give us some time to look at how we maybe come up with that 20% match, because that 20% match, some of it can be in kind, but there'll still be a dollar amount attached to the match for this grant. So it'll give us some time to figure out the calculus around that. But I'm supportive of this, moving forward with the grant opportunity. Yes.
If the policy board were to give us a green light today, we will be calling for an large meeting of all the stakeholders. So that will include not only all the municipalities, but also the police departments, the public health districts, the school districts, to participate in the process, so that as we're drafting the narrative for this particular grant proposal, that we have adequately reflected not only the needs that exist, but also the expertise among the several business professionals and consultants who were from the area and have a lot of expertise in this area. So they can also assist us in the process.
Any other questions? I will now open a public hearing for any registered speakers. Are there any speakers on this item? We don't see any speakers. We'll close the public hearing. I'll entertain a motion regarding the approval of resolution 2022-12 as revised on the sheet in front. So we have a motion from Mr. Thomas and a second from Mr. Bell. Is there any discussion on this motion? On this resolution? There being none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. That motion passes. That's it for all the action items. We will now move to the updates and discussions. The first one is item 7, update discussion regarding the MPO strategic planning work group, and Bo Thomas has been leading that charge. We'll come up and say a few words. Do you want to sit here? Over there. Thanks, Bob.
This is the interactive portion of the meeting today.
Everybody wake up.
So you're gonna have to wake up on, Kevin, you're first.
I don't ever have to.
I come to you again today to kind of give you an update on where the strategic planning committee is. And before I get started too far, the process I think that you just saw and that you just voted on with the Safe Streets for All is somewhat a process change that this group, the strategic planning group, has been having to consider for where we're going. And it's just kind of an example of some of the things that we've been grappling with. But anyway, this will be the last update for me. I'm sure you're glad to know that. And the work group convened on March 4th. The last meeting will be tomorrow. As a matter of fact, Brittany said if we don't finish tomorrow, she's not coming back. And I will tell you that we probably can't finish this process without her. We'll have a complete draft document that will be ready for review by the policy board and the technical advisory committee by the end of July. As a matter of fact, yesterday electronically, or was it today, electronically we got kind of a final draft look of what this product's going to be that comes back to you for consideration. Been getting monthly updates, me on the policy board and Zane Dunn from on the technical advisory committee. So the background and the process on this and what it is we've been doing and what we were kind of tasked with. The planning board asked us to really look and address comprehensively the considerations that the MPO needs to be considering, reviewing, acting on with regard to the change to a possible transportation management area status based upon the population in the area. The effect of the growth pattern in the Waco metropolitan planning area and how that relates to the mobility needs in that particular area. And then to try to strengthen the MPO to address these current needs, but also to take into consideration those future changes that we believe will be coming. As you know, there's been a 5-member work group, 2 members from the policy board, 2 members from the technical advisory committee, basically a citizen member who is a former member of the MPO policy board. TTI staff has been very helpful to us in keeping us online, as well as TxDOT staff. What we are hoping for is a recommendation or things for the policy board to consider, basically for this group for the next 3 to 5 years. Our detailed discussions have been, what is the Waco MPO? What is it? And who its partners are, what that achievement framework may or may not look like, as well as come to you with strategic recommendations for moving forward. So what is the Waco MPO? And it's a federally mandated organization that's responsible for transportation planning throughout McLennan County. For most of the existence of the Waco MPO, it has been a project-specific, project-driven organization. Moving towards the TMA status, as you get all the acronyms that the chairman likes to refer to, the MTP, the TIP, the UPWP, the PPP, the LEP, the ABC, and the XYZ. I don't know which ones those are yet, they haven't told me. But these are the processes and the plans that are having to be put in place so that we can begin to transition into that transportation management area. Composition of the Waco MPO currently is a 20-member policy board representing 19 incorporated cities, McLennan County, and the TxDOT Waco District. There's a 19-member technical advisory committee and the MPO staff support policy board. There are specific work groups. Some of them have not been that active. Some of them have been very active, but for other types of transportation needs, bicycle, pedestrian, those types of things. Who are the partners? We spend a lot of time in our meetings trying to talk about these partners, but the cities in McLennan County, U.S. Department of Transportation, Texas Department of Transportation, Senate, both the Texas Senate, United States Senate, House of Representatives, both state, federal level. But here's where some of this change begins to really change because of that regional planning for transportation. We're starting to get into other issues like transit systems, aviation. Who should some of those stakeholders be? Who should be helping us plan besides just us? And we were starting to identify chambers of commerce, institutions of higher education, Baylor MCC, TSTC, new stakeholders, economic development corporations, foundations, advocacy groups, our independent school districts, Prosper Waco, Business League. Those types of places are people that we need to try to get interested in what it is that this organization is going to begin to plan for into the future. These aren't my words, these are Mukesh's words, achievement framework. It's a little big for me, but anyhow, mission, vision, and values. How are we going to go about establishing regional priorities that guide the MPO plans and its programs? One of the things that we did identify that we need to probably need to do a better job of and really want to recommend is the fact that we need to become more of a regional facilitator and a regional convener, meaning we help people find solutions to their problem, but we also help bring them to the table. Core responsibilities, federally required plans, again, all the acronyms, goals and objectives, develop and plan for long-term transportation and mobility needs. Opportunities, again, you see that word convener, trying to bring people together and corresponding an identity to those issues. Then provide technical assistance and new funding opportunities. So kind of saw how one of those new funding opportunities just a little while ago surfaces. We're gonna come to you with a strategic recommendation. The regional identity. And this was kind of early on and kind of one of the out of the second or third meeting that we had that kind of came up and we talked about is the appropriate identity to be the Waco Metropolitan Planning Organization. Or does there need to be a consideration to a redesignation or naming of the MPO that's maybe more inclusive of the region? We're going to try to come up with your recommendations to prepare for the transportation management area status. And in that comes the fact that we're going to have to determine and recommend to you, but we found this out early on in this process as a committee, that really what's really been holding the MPO back has been the TAC. The Technical Advisory Committee has really been holding this group back. At least we're blaming it on them anyway. But one of the recommendations that I think you're going to see is that you're going to see us recommend that potentially that the policy board send to the Technical Advisory Committee a project criteria and a project outreach process or a solicitation process, if you will, to come up for projects, and then how you're going to evaluate those and select those that are funded moving forward in the future. And then kind of the last recommendation here is this is another Mukesh term, capacity with the MPO. Trying to identify and secure external funding opportunities, strengthen the Technical Advisory Committee and work group and engagement. But in this, I think the underlying message is to try to develop all these stakeholders and try to develop all these partners and get people to work together. And I think plan together. What service is this providing? And how does that service get provided? Of what value is it for someone to become a member of the MPO or the future campaign? So hopefully, the end of July, we'll have a recommendation for the policy board to consider. Be happy to try to answer any questions that you might have. If not, I'm very good at deferring those.
Any questions for both?
We actually also have the 3 members of the TTI staff who have been assisting us throughout the process. Bill Crowley, John Oakman, Brittany Kick were here too. They have been in-state or in-house expert on all matters MPO, and so they're here to answer any question that you might have too.
Great, I'll chime in here. Appreciate the work of TTI and help guiding us through the process and really kind of bringing some awareness to parts of this. We don't think about it, it's taking a step back and looking at it from a different perspective. Because we need to be thoughtful as we move into the TMA status, which is the 250,000. It looks like we're right there on the 200,000. We're right there on the precipice of that status, which means more money for our what now is the MPO. So having this thought process in place, I think is great. The regional identity, I think, was an important part of thinking through it. And I think we'll see some recommendations on that from the group. The strategic partners, how we need to maybe be more intentional about the outreach of this group and who we interact with in Central Texas. That goes very good. And then Bo already went through all of this, but the project process, I'm making it very clear to the public how do you land a project in MPO consideration process. So I think we're sharpening all that up. I think it's looking forward to seeing the final recommendations. The subgroup with TTI and Mukesh and staff, Amy Berlarley, who's here today, and Bo, obviously, and Lorraine Dupuy and Zane Dunham also put in a lot of time on this project, so I appreciate that. We'll now go on to the next item, item 8, the update discussion with the Technical Advisory Committee and Zane Dunham. Floor is yours.
Thank you. Many of y'all know me already. I'm Zane Dunham, County Engineer from McLean County. And this is our first as a Technical Advisory Committee, first time that we've had chair and vice chair. And so I'm the chair starting out, and Amy Burley Highland is the vice chair.
Try to go from Z to A.
And then also here with us is Rasmo, also known as Mo Oliveras, here from Beverly Hills. He is the North City's representative. And then the South City representatives is Tom Dixon, Chief Dixon from Morena. But I really liked Bo's presentation. He did a very good job of explaining what we've been working on, the strategic work group, and every bit of that except for maybe being critical of the TAC. But not agreeing with them on that. But anyway, as chairman of the TAC, we are here to, I want to just say that we're here to help the policy board in any way we can. And I think the reason, I also want to say thank you for adopting the bylaws for the TAC. And this way we can have a formal process of the policy board requesting the TAC to assist the policy board with various efforts. And so we now have a process to do that. But with that, anybody have any questions? I'll be happy to answer them.
Any questions for Zane?
All right. Well,
Zane, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
We brought more kind of formality to the TAC. The relationship here, and I think we're gonna have this report at every meeting, just so we can get the feedback there. The next item on the agenda is item 9, the discussion of updates from TxDOT regarding significant highway construction within the Waco metropolitan area. Clayton Zucker and Jeff Jackson both had conflicts today. The information is very good online, so if anybody wants to look at that information on the updates online, the progress is great. Stan, I don't really want to say anything, but it's just everything's moving along great. I guess the big project I-35. And
Those two guys are much more granular with details, but if anybody has a question, I'd be glad to pick up an answer. All right. If anybody has any questions, I'd be glad.
And that information is online.
And we'll also be compiling any question you have, even if you don't have a question right now. All of the presentation is online and you've probably already seen it. If you have a question, email me, we'll send it all to Clayton. Clayton can answer all the questions and then we'll make sure that you have the responses.
Great, thanks. The next item is item 10, the work group updates. Dr. Kumar.
We do not have any new update today.
No updates today. We move on to item 11, the MPO monthly report. Doctor.
So one of the items that I have that I've offered for you to consider is that I think it would be useful to have a membership update from time to time. If there is anything really important coming from any of the members on the policy board, I think it's important to bring it up. And so I would like to make that a regular standing item on it, and so starting today. And so you may not have thought of it today. If you have any particular item from any of you that you want to bring up, then we'll be happy to hear that. But we have, one of the things I wanted to mention is over the summer, we have 3 students who are going to be working with us, one of whom is here with us, Nora. She's a master's student at UT Austin, and she's helping us compile all the planning documents that exist within McLennan County. And so she will probably be calling each one of you from time to time, especially the ones who refuse to put your plans online because she can't access them. And so she will be calling you and making sure that she has a document. And because what we're trying to do is making sure that all the planning documents that exist, they in fact end up reflecting in the planning process that we do. So she's doing quite a bit of heavy lifting. And we have 2 other students who are also working on refreshing our travel demand model and also mapping out all the crash data. So one of the projects that we are doing over the summer is that with using the latitude, longitude, we're going to map out from 2016 to 2020 all the entire McLennan County crash data, so that we have a good bit of visualized information on where the crashes happened, what happened, and what kind of damage there was, so that we have a better sense of what we need to do. So those are the updates.
Item 12 are the announcements, Doctor.
Actually, the
Give the announcements.
okay. Well, so Our next meeting is September 16th. Typically in the months of July and August, we have had every year difficulty reaching a quorum because I think a lot of you probably already have travel plans, or if you don't have one, you're probably likely to have one. And we do not have any item that on which you need to take an action until September, at which point in time by September, we expect to get the bridge and pavement condition report from TxDOT. And so at the September meeting, we know that we will be adding that on the agenda to discuss. And then at the October meeting, we would be discussing accepting the bridge condition report from TxDOT. Oh, yes, thank you very much. Yes, we will have elections in September for the chair and the vice chair for the policy board.
That's all the announcements. Any questions on the announcements? Does anyone have an agenda item they would like to be considered for a future meeting? If so, let us know at this time. Don't hear you there. The last item or second last item is item 13, the hearing of visitors. This time we provide an opportunity for the public to address the MPO policy board on any item of MPO business not identified in this agenda. We'll put hearing of visitors at 3:12. Staff, do we have any registration cards for speakers? Items not on the agenda. There are none, so I will close the hearing of visitors at 3:12. Item 14 is adjournment, and being no further business, we'll adjourn the meeting at 3:12.
How are you?